So let's analyze the service motion of Carlos Alcaraz. So let's watch his serve 3 times in a row, and then we'll analyze it. Now, I was purposely letting you see Nadal's return, where he was returning between, those marks there. He's hitting the ball nice and deep down the middle. It's a great return of serve against high-level players. All right, so his service motion, very similar to Felix Auger-Aliassime, especially at the beginning. Very similar. This position right here where the front leg is straight, back leg is bent. One thing is with Felix, his front toe is up. And with Carlos here, you can see his front toe is not up. I'm a big fan of the toe being up if someone is moving their feet. So if you're someone who you tend to move your foot, like if you're someone who your front foot steps inside the court before you serve, and people are telling you that it's a foot fault, have your front toe come up like Pete Sampras or Felix Auger-Aliassime, and that'll actually be a nice, easy trick in order to keep your feet or your front foot to stay still. So when he tosses, you'll notice that here before he tosses, his front shoulder is down. And now when he tosses, his front shoulder is up. So he's very much rocking his body back. So his body is rocking away from the net. He doesn't have a lot of coil, though. Again, I'm a big fan of Felix Auger-Aliassime's serve. So if you look at Felix has a lot of coil at the beginning of his serve. So as he tosses, it keeps the tossing arm straight. One thing you'll also notice is he has the racket kind of cocked up from his arm. So let me draw from his elbow to his hand and then from his hand to his racket. So I'm actually a big fan of kind of the opposite here. And it's what Federer does. I'm a big fan of it. You see Felix do it a little bit where it's called ball up, tip down. So when the ball goes up out of the hand, that the tip of the racket isn't pointing up, but that the forearm and the wrist, everything's very relaxed, allowing kind of wrist flexion, just allowing the tip of the racket to actually point down. In order to have the tip of the racket pointing up like this, there has to be some type of tension in the forearm to cock the wrist up with the weight of the racket to have the tip of the racket pointing up. Just my general sense with Carlos's serve, and trust me, he's an absolutely incredible talent. I think he's absolutely a future number one on the Pro Tour. But there is a lot of muscle to his shots, and it's not a fluid and loose, relaxed motion. I think a lot of his hits are very muscular. Not that that's bad. I feel the same way about Nadal, and he's got 21 Grand Slams at the moment. So it doesn't mean that it's not going to, help him in his quest for greatness. But just showing you what you can copy as a recreational player. I'm a big fan of the tip of the racket actually pointing down when the ball leaves the hand. And don't forget, if you're looking for people in your local area to compete against, practice with, and even find a coach who's close to you who can help you with your serve, use my link in the description, playyourcourt.com/2minute tennis to get 50% off. You can see his back foot coming up. I love that he brings his back foot up against his front foot. You see a lot of recreational players, they bring the back foot next to the front foot, and it opens up the body way too much. And then all of a sudden they're facing forward by the time they contact the ball. So you want to make sure that when you do use a pinpoint stance, that you toss, then you bring that foot up, which is the order that it should happen. You want to toss, then bring that foot up. When you do that, put it behind your front foot. That helps keep your chest at least somewhat closed to the net. Now, here's an interesting move. So I want you to notice his elbow position right here. After he tosses the ball, he's bending his elbow, and we can see it right here. He's bending his elbow, but his elbow is not behind him. Again, I'm a big fan of Felix. When at this moment, and I'll do a future side-by-side comparison of these two players, Carlos and Felix, but Felix's elbow is already behind him. And one thing about Carlos's serve here is he's very late to get his elbow back. You want the elbow back, and the reason you want the elbow back is because the throwing motion of the serve is the elbow going forward and up. So you can see his elbow coming forward and up. Well, it can only really go forward and up if it's back first. He's pretty late with this elbow movement. I'm wondering, and I hope not, but I'm wondering if this is going to give him any shoulder problems throughout his career, especially as he gets older, if his elbow is late to go back and then come forward again. Because what happens is when the elbow is late to go back, you have to kind of slam on the brakes and then immediately step on the accelerator to go back up again into the shot. So I would love if, as he's actually bringing his racket up, that elbow is already back, that he's not waiting until you can see his elbow drop. Watch this. Oh, yes. Check this out. Watch his elbow go like this. His elbow goes down, and then it goes back. I would love if from right here, it would just immediately go back. That way it's early and there's not going to be a lot of tension in the arm and in the shoulder in order to reverse course and come back up to contact. I love the timing of his leg drive. You can see that his leg drive is actually occurring, and we can see his leg drive. It's actually a line here in the back fence, but I'll draw it there. That's the top of his head at his lowest point. So when we see him pop up against that line or above that line, that's when we know he's driving up with his legs. You'll notice that he's actually popping up right there. We can see his leg drive begin when his racket is to the right of his head. This is what you saw with Andy Roddick. You see Grigor Dimitrov, Riley Opelka. They do this where the leg drive actually begins when the racket is in front of the head from this vantage point. You really have anywhere in here, right? So this is kind of the range of acceptability. You don't want to be driving your legs up when your racket's here, and you don't want to be driving your legs up when your racket's all the way back here. Anywhere in the just before the knock the birthday hat off moment or as you're knocking the birthday hat off moment, that's the range of acceptability for the leg drive. At that moment, right when his elbow goes back, we can see his chest open up a little bit toward the back fence, which is good. That means he's coiling a little more, ready to uncoil. As he brings the racket around, you can see the racket in complete supinated position. We can see his strings are actually pointing slightly down at this point. One of my favorite drills to have students use in order to learn this position is to actually practice hitting the ball with the back of the strings. Yes, you heard that correctly. To use the wrong side of the racket as a mechanism and as a drill to learn this position where the strings are actually facing slightly down. And you see all the pros are in this position. The strings are actually slightly down prior to contact, and that then forces pronation into the shot. We can see the racket here is on edge. Again, if you film yourself and you don't see this position, you gotta learn it. Continental grip, lead with the edge of the racket toward contact. We'll see his head's staying up. He's not really pulling down with his head, which is great. We can see that his left hand is visible here. So he is tucking that tossing arm in against the body, which is a reactive break. It's a great way to slow the body's rotation down. And when you slow the body's rotation, the hitting arm accelerates. Really great. We can see he doesn't have a tremendous amount of pronation after contact. And pronation happens prior to contact, right? So you begin pronating prior to contact, and then the racket keeps pronating. But right here, we can kind of zoom in. If we look at, let's say, John Isner, for instance, Isner's racket is actually facing slightly up. We saw Becker in that same position, Sampras in that same position. Here we can see with Carlos, his strings are actually facing slightly down. Let's see. Oh, yeah, he's got this, a little bit of the Sampras elbow, where this is actually something that I've been doing recently with my serve to help me pronate even better, is to actually bend the serving elbow, the hitting arm, after contact as a way to help the pronation. He is someone who throws that tossing arm back behind him. I'm a fan of just keeping it tucked in front of you, just like Nadal. You can see he's got that scorpion leg, as it's called, for balance. You can see that he jumped inside the court with his serve, which is absolutely fantastic. It's actually pretty good. He's jumping pretty much forward. Some players, like pro players and recreational players, they jump way to the left. So I love that he's actually jumping forward into the court. But man, is this kid talented. Absolutely incredible what he can do with his game. Again, I talked about a little bit here with Nadal and his return of serve. I'm a big fan of when the return goes down the middle. So if you got somebody who's just absolutely bombing serves to you, don't feel like you got to hit to the corners. You can just center the ball. As long as you hit your return deep down the middle, they're not going to be able to do much with that ball. So please go on and film yourself and compare what you see with your serve against what you're learning on YouTube from my channel. There's so many great channels you should be watching. But please compare what you're doing on your serve to the pros, and there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.